Hi, everybody. Welcome back to In the Cards and Stars. I'm your host, Bridget Mogensen, and I have my husband, Michael Mogensen, here, also known on the channel as Lawyermog, who is finally telling us the spooky story he's been promising. Take it away, Michael. He's going to basically host this episode because he's just going to tell us the story. So get around your campfire.
Get your gun and load it.
Don't do that. Okay, go.
Okay, so part of the reason we pushed this back a little bit is I literally just got off the phone with one of the prosecutors in this case because in researching some of this is a case that I worked on, and when I worked on it was 2008, 2009, but it actually dates back to murders that took place in 1990, in April of 1990, May of 1990, and then multiple things throughout the years. So as weird as it may sound, there was a major criminal group that was based out of some rural counties in Kansas, just outside of Kansas City. And they were nationwide, and they stole property, guns, vehicles, and moved them around the country. And they were serious characters that were very bad. So that's kind of the back case. I was a fairly young attorney at the time and had a guy just come in off the street, kind of, and I've described his vehicle as a Scooby-Doo van. I will say this, okay, as we get into this, I'm not revealing any attorney-client privilege. The information that we provided to law enforcement was a proffer. My person was an ancillary member of this particular organization, not one of the heavy hitters, but involved. And as the story goes, you'll get a feel for how involved. We're not going to disclose his name for various reasons. And but the other things are all I've got all the documents on it, missing person reports. I've got the incarceration records.
When you brought all this stuff home, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're like in a real First 48 or like, a real A&E drama. Anyway, go on.
Well, and there are many articles about this situation. Some of the information in the articles are limited because they kind of stick to just the simple facts that took place in a couple of individual situations here. But there was an overall bigger scope, or at least that's the information that I had, and that's the information we turned over to what's known as used to be known as the murder squad here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. And in that murder squad, it's various agencies from both sides of Missouri and from Kansas, in addition to the FBI. ATF can sometimes be involved, but because there were firearms in this case and the theft of firearms, they were. And then there were numerous jurisdictions because these crimes were right on the state line. State line runs right down the middle of Kansas City. And so lots of times they go cross state lines, which makes a lot of crimes here in this area also federal. So that's kind of the backdrop. Here's the situation. So a Scooby-Doo van pulls up, and by Scooby-Doo van, I mean the one that's akin to the Mystery Machine from the old cartoons. Looked like a weird custom van, and a guy comes in, very, very intelligent person. Smelled like welding, metallic smell. Looked like he was a laborer, very dirty, very intelligent though. And he came and talked to me, said he needed to meet about some murders. And obviously that'll raise your eyebrows.
The law office is like, what?
So meet with him, and he proceeds to tell me about this particular crime ring that's doing these various and sundry things throughout the metropolitan area. But in the context of that, there was a group of them who broke off from the group here, a main group. And there were some drug people involved in different locations. While we're talking, and he's giving me this background, and I'm just kind of listening and taking it all in and taking notes, I had my car keys, house keys, everything on my desk. And this is part of the creepy part, freaky part. As we're sitting there talking, I notice he's kind of like, he'll look down at my keys periodically, or like in that direction. And whatever. Maybe it's just whatever how he's telling the story. And he finally just stops and he looks at me kind of serious and he goes, you should never put your keys out like that. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So I'm like,
You're like what?
like what do you mean? He goes, you should not have them out on your desk like that. And I was like, okay, why? And he goes, because somebody like me, I've taken a photograph in my memory or in my head right now, and I can make copies of your keys that are sitting on the desk. And I was like, oh shit, I don't have my keys on my desk ever again since then.
Note to self, guys.
Yeah. So now it's much different because those guys stole cars all the time. Most everybody has a fob now on cars. They're newer cars.
It's different now.
So it's different. But like there's some older cars you still have a key, but for houses you have a key, like oftentimes. And anyway, so it was freaky. And keep in mind this conversation took place in 2008. So I'm unsettled a little bit, but like, okay. And then he goes on and tells me, he goes, well, my particular specialty is being able to help people bypass security systems, i.e. locks and various systems like that. And part of it is through these, just being able to recall what a key looks like and then make a duplicate. So he tells me the story. This group broke off. There was a drug dealer who was in a drug transaction had taken place within the group. And there was $500,000 in cash. And this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. Because remember, these murders that we're going to talk about took place, one of them April 18th, 1990, one of them May 26th, 1990. I was barely at high school at that time, so I wasn't even an attorney. These things.
Me too.
These people, yeah. these things. Some things never even came to light or didn't come to light. Anyway, so he tells me that he had made a duplicate key, that they knew of $500,000 in cash from this drug transaction, and that 4 of the guys, him included, went to this outbuilding that it was locked in. He had provided a key. The key worked. They went in and stole the money, locked it back up, and the person who they robbed could not figure out how it happened and was out to kill anybody and that he could find out. So he was out hunting to see who in the organization had robbed him $500,000 in 1989, 88, 89.
So back then, like in today's money, for anybody watching who's younger, like
significantly more.
So it's a lot of money.
Several $1 million is what it would.
And this person couldn't figure out how it happened because imagine you leave your house, you come back, everything's stolen, but your door's still locked. Like what?
And nothing is out of place. Nothing is ransacked. Just the money's vanished. And so
it's like from a movie.
So clearly it was somebody. He knew it was somebody that
he knew.
He knew he had the money, knew where he had the money in their group.
Sure.
So there are some ancillary murders going on within this group, in this organization. And keep in mind, it goes across the country. So as it's getting more hairy and people are starting to get knocked off and people are really worrying, these 4 individuals are concerned. My guy is one of the people, and he's going to keep his mouth shut. He's not saying anything. But there is a fellow who was named Eric Montgomery. And here's his little picture in his incarceration records. And Eric Montgomery was allegedly one of the leaders of this group. And it was his idea to take the money, and he was actually sitting on most of it. And so the story went that the guys who knew about it, one guy who was actually with them on the theft was allegedly a person named Lloyd Folsom. And the person who wasn't a criminal by all accounts, but liked hanging out with these guys and would let them come out to his own property and to shoot guns, all these felons who had no business with guns. And his family still owns a business in town. His name was Everett Bishop. And allegedly, according to the information that I received and we turned over to the murder squad, Mr. Bishop had overheard these guys talking about it. So he was essentially, in their minds, a loose end. And as it turns out, that I still have these are still missing people. So I just pulled these missing people reports off the Doe Network, and I'm gonna let Britt read these little descriptions about what is happening. The first one is for Mr. Folsom, and Mr. Folsom was allegedly here's Mr. Folsom. And so I'll let Britt just read it so she can tell you this is the background. And this is sourced from the Doe Network, which is for missing people, and it references articles and various things. Go ahead.
So one thing that is really interesting, just note the date of birth. This is just from like a strange numerology perspective. This person's date of birth is actually, oh, I'm sorry, this person, the last day that he was seen is actually the date of birth of the other person who was also killed in this crime ring situation. So just kind of weird. Anyway, Lloyd was last seen on the morning of April 18th, 1990. A 9 energy. By the way, you guys, we've been talking about 9 energy with Liam Payne. Just saying. And I was born on the 9th too. So if you're born on the 9th or the 18th, don't be scared. Or the 27th. But it's a transformative energy. Okay. Anyway, Lloyd was last seen on the morning of April 18th, 1990, when he dropped his daughter off at school. He disappeared later that day. Lloyd's Ford van was found in a parking lot at Kansas City International Airport. Lloyd was reported missing 5 days after his disappearance. Because of the time delay, the airlines were unable to check whether he had boarded a plane. Times were different back then with what they could do with technology. In June of 2008, detectives were called to investigate the disappearance and suspected foul play of Lloyd.
That's when I became involved.
Eric Montgomery, who's the person that we just showed you, Eric Montgomery, was brought in for an interview. He told officers he thought the issue of Lloyd's disappearance had been put to rest during the trial of
Cheryl Brinkley.
Are we saying that person's name?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. During the trial of it's public record. Okay. During the trial of Cheryl Brinkley for the murder of Everett Bishop. Montgomery indicated to authorities that Lloyd had suffered the same fate as Everett. Lloyd and Everett had been put into barrels and placed into the Missouri River. Montgomery testified previously under immunity regarding the homicide of Everett, but that immunity was not extended to any other criminal activity on the part of Montgomery. He was convicted of aiding a felon in the disappearance and second-degree murder of Lloyd. Neither Everett nor Lloyd's bodies have yet to be found.
Okay, so that kind of gives you a breakdown of what happened. So the day that Lloyd went missing was April 18th of 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can read Bishop's now too. And again, this is a current missing person report that's still on the Doe
because they never found their bodies. So they just okay. And this is the other person who is a victim. Everett was last seen by his brother at approximately 2 p.m. on May 26, 1990, at Vista Lee Lumber Company in Bonner Springs, which still exists to this day.
Still run by his family. It had been in his family for years before.
Everett told his brother he was leaving for the day and was heading home. He was reported missing by family and friends on June 7th. Everett's cars were found in his garage and his house was unlocked. Because of a prior burglary at his Linwood house, he was not known to leave it unoccupied for long, and his absence without any word to his family and friends was out of character. In 1990, according to court records, Cheryl Brinkley, who's a very bad guy, who had only met Everett a few times, had sold Everett a Datsun 280Z. Okay. During a visit to North Carolina. While driving back to Kansas City, the car broke down and Everett left it in a parking lot in St. Louis. Unbeknownst to Everett, Brinkley, who had a criminal record, had sold Everett a stolen car. Brinkley became concerned police would find the car and trace it back to him. On May 26, 1990, between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., Brinkley and mutual acquaintance Eric Montgomery visited Everett at his home in Linwood under the ruse of target shooting on Everett's property. Brinkley, using a Tech 9 semi-automatic handgun with a silencer from Everett's gun collection, he used this guy's own gun to kill him.
Yeah, the felons couldn't possess any firearms, and one of the reasons they liked hanging out with
Everett
was because he had a big
had some
gun.
land, and
He had
they could
land and he had a
go
big gun collection because his family's pretty well off.
from Everett's gun and with a silencer from Everett's gun collection shot Everett numerous times. Brinkley and Montgomery stuffed Everett's body into a metal barrel and drove it to the Missouri River near where Ameristar Casino is today, and then threw it into the river. During trial, Montgomery testified missing person Lloyd Folsom was also killed by Brinkley 1 month prior to Everett's murder, which oddly enough was on Everett's birthday of April 18th. Or that's when he was reported missing, but it doesn't seem like they messed around. It took a lot of time with all this.
They killed him on April 18th.
They killed him on April 18th. Okay, yeah.
And it was this guy. It was this guy's Everett's birthday.
Mm. Lloyd's body was disposed of in a similar manner in the barrel. In 1992, Brinkley was found guilty of Everett's murder. Montgomery was given immunity for testifying against Brinkley. Neither Everett nor Lloyd's bodies have yet to be found.
Okay, so that's kind of the gist of it. So, if you think about it, stop and think about it, some of that doesn't make any sense in that particular story, because you're talking about a guy in North Carolina selling a car to a person in Kansas for a stolen car that he would have no contact with this person, but for these criminals who would hang out on his property and fire guns. And what I was told, and the information we provided to the murder squad, was that that wasn't necessarily an accurate story. That story came from Montgomery, because when all these murders happened and people started getting caught, Brinkley, who is this character, actually got caught in North Carolina with the Tech 9 firearm and the silencer and other guns that belonged to Everett. And so he, as a felon in possession of those firearms, picked up new federal charges. Because he had the firearm that ballistics proved killed Everett, they were going to bring him up on murder charges. Now, allegedly, the people who were present at that time was Brinkley and Montgomery. And the person that I represented knew about this and was able to provide evidence because he had been called to the house to do the welding and seal the barrels. And so the information that we provided was he came to the house. These guys were downstairs. He went down there. He saw a body in the barrel, and he lifted the head of the body up, and it was Lloyd Folsom.
Hold on. Back up. Back to the office.
Okay.
I won't say anything else.
So anyway, after many edits here, in my office, the guy I represented, after talking about my keys, tells me that he was he was requested to show up at the property where Eric Montgomery was staying. And this would have been around
1990?
April of 1990. And he showed up. He was told that they needed something welded. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, you can't figure that out yourself. What's that important? He gets there, and there are a couple guys downstairs, and they tell him, just yell up, come on down, come on down. So he goes down, and he described it as a creaky old, like, dirt floor building in an old farmhouse. So I can imagine, in your head, you can imagine how spooky that might have been. As he descended into there, he could see this 55-gallon barrel in the middle of the room, and they already had some welding tools down there for him. He's coming down, and looks like there's something in the barrel, not sure what. And as he gets down the steps, he can kind of tell that it's a person who's slumped over, kind of sitting forward, head facing down. And obviously at this point, he is extremely concerned for his own well-being. And he's told, just weld the lid on this. We don't want it coming off. And for some reason, he said he took the hair and pulled the head back, and he recognized that as his former cohort, Lloyd Folsom. And then he was able to describe to law enforcement some of the injuries that that person had suffered. But he welds it, and he's, as he described, scared that he is going to be executed himself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he gets it done, and then they obviously the barrel's heavy, so they need help going up these rickety old steps, and they get up the steps carrying it one step at a time, and he's backing up. He said he wanted to be on the end, so he was backing up the steps, and he got out and just said, "Okay, I'm out of here." And he was obviously very frightened.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, he's obviously thinking about turning states, and he's worried big time that now not only are they worried about this drug dealer whacking people in the organization, Montgomery is clearly worried, and he wants to tie up all the loose ends. He's definitely a loose end. In the meantime, I think I said earlier, Everett had allegedly, and I don't even know that this is necessarily a real fact, but there was concern that he might have overheard about the robbery that those guys were involved in. And I'm going to make it super clear, nobody ever alleged that Bishop ever did anything wrong. In fact, law enforcement came out in one of the articles and said he was not a criminal. And like I said, his family still owns the business. By all accounts, he was not a criminal, didn't know the car was stolen that he allegedly left in North Carolina. I don't even know if that part of it was true or not at all.
He just got mixed up with some bad
He just
people and bonded over, I guess, guns and cars, and
exactly
made the wrong friends.
and that's exactly
And they were
right.
very bad people, unfortunately.
And allegedly, it was there's a mule club
Mm-hmm.
for actual mules, donkeys, and this guy had so much property that he rented out space in his oh my gosh, what's the word that put horses? Stables. And Folsom, that's how he met Folsom. How he got tied in it all.
That's how he met.
Folsom had some mules that were being housed at Bishop's property in the stables. That's how they met. It was just a dumb luck. And then they became friends, who then entered in through Folsom. All these other guys came into his peripheral or kind of his life.
Okay.
And then approximately a month later, Montgomery calls my guy again and says, "I need you to come out and do some welding again." And my guy is freaked out because he's like, "What in the world?"
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes out to the spot, and he sees that this time it's only Montgomery's vehicle. So he's like, "Well, it's just one-on-one here. There's nobody else here. So I'm not going to run away right now." But he's in his head contemplating, I got to do something, get out of here. I'm in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Goes in, same scenario, come down the stairs, barrel in the middle of the floor. Weld the lid is what he's told. And this time the body in the barrel is
their other friend,
Mr. Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been now killed just because he might have heard about some of this robbery with the drug money.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, same situation. My guy's very, very worried. He seals it up, and as he sealed it up, he told me, and he told law enforcement this. He was like, I was looking at it. He had his welding mask on. He described, and he said, in the instant that he finished welding it, he thought, this might be the last thing I see, because he was worried that Montgomery was going to kill him too. He didn't, because Montgomery needed his help getting the barrel up. So again, this time he wanted to go up the stairs backwards, and Montgomery insisted that he carry the bottom.
What?
And so now my guy is now deciding, if I get out of this basement, I'm running. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to survive.
Sure.
And luckily for him, he got up the stairs, and as they kind of got to the top of the stairs, he said he pushed his way by, and the barrel kind of tilted and rolled, and it was he described it as a kitchen going right to a back porch, and the barrel kind of tilted. So he was able to get by him. And he said, as he was going out, Montgomery's trying to still hold the barrel, and he goes, "Let me go get a dolly from my truck," which is smart thinking because that would make it easy to move the barrel. And he goes out, and there's one more barrel sitting by the back door at the base of the porch. And he said, "I saw that barrel, and I knew it was for me." So he ran to the truck or the van and left and never came back. And so the story then goes, as Britt's read, that those barrels allegedly ended up in the Missouri River. Ultimately, what happened was Montgomery, he went and turned state's evidence and tried to blame Brinkley, Cheryl Brinkley, this fellow, for the first murder, because Brinkley is the one who had the firearms when he got caught in Carolina with the actual firearm. And there was no evidence, no witnesses for that first trial except Montgomery. So the testimony that the jury believed was that Montgomery was scared, but by all accounts, he was actually one of the leaders, and that he actually killed that person, and Brinkley was involved to help him. So also guilty of murder. But Cheryl Brinkley, he gets convicted of the murder for Bishop, which was actually the second murder, but he was linked to it through the firearms that Bishop had owned and that he had in his possession. Long story longer, he then goes back to North Carolina and pleads guilty to the federal charges. So the feds take him, so he avoids state time. This case is so freaky that he was convicted in 1993, but he also then went and pled in federal, and the federal feds held him for until 2017 without allowing him to be sentenced on the murder case from 1993.
Whoa.
So in 2017, with the guys now that I know very well, he got sentenced, and his life sentence for the murder of 1993 occurred in 2017.
The prosecutors, really well.
Right.
That's
what I'm talking about.
Making sure people know.
And so then what recently happened was that sentencing was upheld in 2023. And I kid you not, Mr. Brinkley just got released at age 79 in May of this year of 2024. So he is currently out. And
he lives in
North Carolina. And he is convicted of murder. Montgomery had been given immunity to testify against Brinkley in 1993. One of the things that you learn in legally is when you give a proffer to get an immunity, you have to give every bit of criminal information that you have ever done. And if you don't give them all the information, then anything they find out about you could then later be used. So they asked him about various things. He admitted to enough to stick Cheryl in there, Mr. Brinkley, but he failed to say that anything about Folsom. So it was in 2008 that I think Folsom's family and the family of Bishop kept talking to law enforcement. They finally reopened the investigation. The murder squad and the cold squad got together on it. And my guy finally came forward with the information that we provided. It was with that information that they then went and talked to Montgomery, and Montgomery unwittingly admitted to the killing of Folsom as well, which would not been part of the proffer back in the 90s for the other trial. As a result, he got convicted, and ultimately he died in prison where he belonged.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a freaky story.
That's
a little small Americana. One of the weird cases I've had to deal with. Anyway,
who knew?
There are a lot more details to it, but Britt keeps hitting me to move along.
Well, we have to go. Well, but
short version.
Don't have to be late. So the moral of the story is, keep your wits about you.
Keep your keys off your desk.
Keep your keys off your desk.
If somebody has friends who are felons, stay the hell away from them. Don't allow felons.
Yeah, don't hang out with bad people.
Don't allow felons to come to your property and shoot firearms.
Don't hang out with people doing illegal activities.
And if somebody asks you to come weld a barrel, get the fuck
just
out
say
of there.
no.
Get the heck out of there.
Yeah. And also, if you want to follow Dr. Burgess's advice,
get a dog and a gun.
get a dog and a gun, and preferably a German Shepherd.
That's
And
right.
the good news is the shelters are so full of German Shepherds that you can probably adopt one for free at your local animal rescue or animal shelter. All right, guys, I love you so much. Thank you for joining us. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever had a spooky experience. What is the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Share your Spooktober experiences here. Experiences. All right, love you guys. Thanks so much. Thank you, Michael.
This still wasn't the creepiest, the most evil person I've ever met, though, in a case.
There's one worse one.
Yeah, we'll save that for a different day.
Cliffhanger. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for being here. Love you, Michael.
Court adjourned.
Oh yeah, your new tagline. Love it.
See ya.
Perfect. Bye, guys.